Hello, everyone. I apologize, I'm having some technical difficulties, but we're almost there.
While Megan gets things in order, I'm going to cover a little bit of the logistics for today's webinar. We will be recording this webinar and we'll have it posted on the CoC internal competition page in the webinar table as soon as we get it pulled down, edited, and uploaded. Additionally, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. At times the chat might be too busy, so we really encourage you to use the Q&A box if you have questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, my apologies again, but you should be seeing our presentation now. Jesse's going to keep an eye on the chat for me, but we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining. For those of you who joined on our June 11th webinar, that was an overview of the NOFO. We are going to have a little bit of repeat content at the very beginning. I'm going to fly through that, and then the majority of this webinar is going to be based on the INBOS, or Indiana Balance of State, policies and ranking and scoring, and how the internal competition is actually going to be run. Just as a refresher, so we're going to discuss a couple of definitions, review the NOFO purpose and process, briefly gloss over some of HUD's major funding and scoring priorities, and then discuss what the Balance of State CoC board has decided as far as those ranking and scoring, and considerations for your project, how that affects. And then we're going to go through the application process. I'll show you where the link is, and I'll show you how to find all the information that you're going to need when you complete the application. CoC, again, when I say that, I'm talking about the Continuum of Care Grant Program. It's also a colloquial term for our collective statewide system of service providers. NOFO, or Notice of Funding Opportunity, something you'll hear a lot. ARD, or Annual Renewal Demand, that is the total amount of funding that HUD has assigned to the state of Indiana, or Balance of State, I should say, CoC. And that's the main number of funds that we're trying to achieve. Internal competition, that's what we're all about today. Discussing the internal competition and how that works. How do you apply for funding through the NOFO? The collaborative application, this is the total application sent to HUD by IHCDA. It's different from your individual project application. As IHCDA is the collaborative applicant, we'll work alongside of you, those of you who are HUD direct funded, to complete our collaborative application. And if I say any acronyms or use any terms that you're unfamiliar with or that are confusing, please feel free to put those in the chat. All right, again, briefly reviewing this. The NOFO is from Congress approves an amount every year for HUD. HUD then creates their individual policy based on the administrative priorities and designates a certain dollar amount as well as those policy priorities for the CoC program. Then they release a NOFO, which is what we received on June 1st. And the last step and kind of the flow is that NOFO goes out for nationwide competition for that funding. And that's what we're talking about today. Again, a little over 4.4 billion, or 4.04 billion, I should say, appropriated by Congress to HUD. And the Indiana Balance of State priorities were voted on by the board of directors, the CoC board of directors last week, and we'll go through what those are. This is a slide we saw last time, but I just wanted to add a little bit of a clarification. So there's the internal application process or internal competition process. There's individual projects. That's the work that you all do every single day. It's specific to your community needs. It's specific to your organization priorities, your organization's fundings streams, whether those are CRC or otherwise. And those are your projects, the individual projects completed by you, and that's the application process for those individual projects are going to be submitted to the internal competition, and that's all of the separate projects throughout the state will be submitted through this internal competition, and then those will all be scored and ranked by the CoC board. Then, once we have our list of, hey, HUD, here's what we want to fund from the CoC board's perspective, then that list and additional application materials are submitted to HUD through their HUD system. Those of you who are HUD Direct, you know that this third step requires a lot of collaboration between the collaborative applicant, which is IHCDA, as well as you, HUD Direct, and we'll have a training with Howard Birchman on getting everything in eSnaps. Those of you who are subgrantees of IHCDA, you do not have to do anything past this process. You're complete at the internal competition stage and don't need to worry too much about that. This is important because we'll talk about due dates later on. The NOFO's overall due date is August 26th. That is not your due date for the, sorry, going back a slide. That is not your due date for the internal competition. That is our due date as the collaborative applicant to submit everything to HUD. That's why you're seeing such a quick turnaround for the rest of these items. All right, this is a slide. I'm not going to go through this one this time. We discussed this in the last webinar, and if you missed that, I encourage you to go back and read through this or look through the PDF. We'll have that posted. HUD has significantly changed their funding priorities this year, as well as how they will be ranking and scoring projects. And when HUD talks about projects, they're talking about our internal competition. They're talking about the big picture. What is Indiana Balance of State doing? So we have our individual projects, and then we have the internal competition, the collection of the projects that's sent to HUD. And so everything that we're doing to design and facilitate this internal competition is to give that final product to HUD of what they want. So this slide, again, will be here for your resource. That's kind of the priorities that we utilized to discuss with the board, and the board created these internal policies that are really guiding the decisions that have been made. All right, this is new this year. I cannot stress this enough. Typically, the Balance of State Board releases the scoring and ranking policies after everyone has completed the internal competition. That's because usually about 90% of our funding is typically renewed, and we don't have to do too much calculus to try and figure out which projects should and should not be funded. It's basically been a process of, are you doing great work? Can you prove it with your APRs and SPMs? Awesome. You're good to go for another year. This year, because of the changes that HUD is making, all of that has changed significantly, as you all know. So what we've done this year is we have published those scoring and ranking policies before. We're publishing them now in congruence with the internal application and internal competition, because you need to know what you're being measured against. This has kind of been an administrative thing that's happened on the back end. The board has completed it at the end in whatever way that makes it work for renewing the most projects. Because of all these changes this year, we're putting it out in front. So this is a screenshot right now from our internal competition page. This is what it looks like. Jesse, if you haven't already, if you could post that link in the chat.
Already
If
linked.
oh, perfect, of course. This is also a hyperlink. If you are, if you get this PDF of the PowerPoint later and you're like, what, where was that again? There's a hyperlink in here. I will also show you exactly what it looks like. So if you're going to the Indiana Balanced Estate Continuum of Care website, this is remember, there's kind of two websites. There's the main IHCDA page, and then there's the Balanced Estate CoC page. This is in under that CoC category. You're going to click on this little hamburger here, whatever that's called, and you're going to select Internal Competition. On that internal competition page is everything that you will need to succeed in this internal competition piece. The ranking and scoring policies, read those. We're going to go through them today, but read it, study it, highlight it, make notes, because there's a lot of changes. And we want everybody to be on the same page. This is also a great resource if you know anyone in your community, any other organizations that you work with or partner with in your region, and they haven't applied in a while or haven't applied ever. Send this to them. This is the link where they can learn about who's eligible, how to apply, and what would be expected of them as an applicant. So check out this link here, and again, we'll go through that in a second.
And Megan, just because you mentioned that recommending it to new applicants or applicants who haven't been funded in a while, I want to make a special call out to an upcoming webinar. You may talk about this later, but there is a specific first time applicant webinar that will be held next week. It can be found at that same link. And that first time applicant webinar is going to be an hour and a half. It's longer than most of our other webinars because we are genuinely hoping that we will have people less familiar with this process so that we can make sure that they also are able to apply as interested.
Thanks, Jesse. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm also going to mention we have all of our webinars for the internal competition also on the same page. So you can register. I know most of you probably heard about this through the newsletter, or it was forwarded to you via the newsletter. This page is also where you can, if you're instead of searching through your email and trying to find the right newsletter and link, you can also just go straight to this page, register. Once we complete each of these webinars, they're going to be recorded and posted here as well. So here's that recording from the 11th. Today's webinar will be posted right here sometime the next couple of business days. So yeah, that's a very helpful resource as well. Alrighty. Here's a visual. You saw this piece, the dark blue in the June 11th webinar, but I wanted to add a couple of things based on those ranking and scoring policies. I wanted to just be very clear and point those out. Based on the ranking and scoring policies, which again, we'll go through in a second, we anticipate that our tier 1 funding, or 60% of our ARD, if you think of this whole bar as 100% of the funding we anticipate receiving from HUD, or what we're applying for as a collective CoC, we anticipate this 60% to be PSH renewals, as well as the federally mandated infrastructure grants, which is our statewide CE grant and HMIS. This is different from the past, I know. And then tier 2, we anticipate those projects to be new transitional housing and new supportive services only projects. And then keep in mind here, we'll have some individual conversations with our DV providers about DV bonus projects and how those are going to be funded. That is all going to be in tier 2. I'm sure we'll have several questions on that, but we will get into the nitty-gritty of the policy now. So I'm going to leave this screen up as well. If at any point you need to hop off or have further questions, or maybe you think through a question and you're like, hey, I want to talk through this more. Um, Email us, cocnetwork@ihcda.in.gov. We are already having meetings with several of you, and we'll make ourselves available throughout the internal competition time to work on projects and talk through things with you. Also, I really encourage folks to collaborate with your peers, talk to other people in your region. Um, if a region, as you're looking at new TH and new SSO, maybe there's one organization where the TH project fits better and the SSO project fits better. Collaborate with each other. We want to again reiterate, this is a collective. We are regions. We are balance of state serving Hoosiers and working to solve homelessness across Indiana. We are not individual agencies. We are not competing against each other. We are, think of it as competing against other states and other COCs because we want to make sure we're able to take care of our folks as best we can. And then I also encourage you to talk to other partners, even if they're outside of your region. We had a question yesterday from a project that they're looking to transition their RRH project to a TH project, and they are worried about the leasing and rental assistance change. The switch from using rental assistance to provide tenant-based rental assistance versus now having to go to transitional housing and using leasing dollars to pay rent. We already have a couple of partners in our CoC who have been doing that for a couple of years. So those folks can be resources to talk through and explain, oh, I made this mistake, or I did this and it was worked really, really well. Those people exist. Again, we're a collective, we're a collaborative, we're a balance of state CoC, and there's other resources out to help you. Okay, everyone, take a breath, including me, because I know it's a lot. We are going to go again back to our internal competition page, and I'm going to pull up these policies. So here's what the document looks like. And again, please read through these yourself and make notes. I am going to highlight a couple of key items, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. The first thing I want to highlight, obviously, timeline and key due dates. We released the policies and the application this past Monday. The application I will show you in a little bit. It is going to be through JotForm again. And those of you who did the pre-test, again, thank you for doing that. That helped to inform these policies and how people were likely to be ranked. And that was a really crucial piece in this process. We did get one question, and it's a great question. Several folks were thinking, well, I already did the pre-test. Isn't that the same thing as the internal competition? No, the pre-test was actually, it was purely just for informational purposes. So you will still need to do this updated JotForm application. This is the real thing. The pre-test was optional. It was very helpful. We're grateful to those of you who completed it. This is the real deal. This is the required one. So again, that's open as of Monday, and it is due on July 17th. We understand that is a really tight turnaround, especially for all of the changes. We deeply wish we could give you more time. Believe us, we will do the best we can together to get this done. July 31st is when applicants will be notified of the ranking and scoring. Those, again, there's a section down here that will be discuss how the ranking and scoring is taking place. And August 7th So you will have, I believe it's 7 business days to review or sorry, 7 calendar days to review and appeal if you believe that you were unfairly scored or unfairly ranked in accordance with the policies. And then from August 7th to August 26th, those of you who are direct HUD funded and us as IHCDA, the collaborative applicant, will be working together to get everything in eSnaps so to send off to HUD by the 26th. And then I believe it's not on here, but I think HUD said that they intend to make announcements by like early December. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kristen or Jesse. I'm pretty sure it was like December 1st. We'll see. Again, the next section is regarding applicant eligibility. A lot of this information is pulled straight from the NOFO, so this is good for first-time folks. Um, these ranking and scoring policies purpose, we wanted to put these in here. These were kind of the guiding points that the board used to make these decisions and making sure when they were working through things, they had kind of an anchor to go back on. All right, this is the section that everyone has been waiting for. So we have an eligibility matrix for your project type. This is on page, what are we on? 4, 6. This is where the big changes are. So basically what this will help you think through is as you're putting together your application, what type of project do you want to actually submit? So we have permanent supportive housing, PSH. Those are only going to be eligible for renewals. We will not be accepting new PSH project applications this year. Transitional housing, eligible for renewal and eligible as new projects. Rapid rehousing will not be eligible for a renewal and will not be eligible for new projects. And I know that's big. We understand, and the CoC board discussed this extensively. This is not about those projects not doing well, not doing important critical work. This is purely to ensure that we are able to maintain the funding that we have and restructure it to HUD's priorities. Next, supportive services only. Yes, those projects can be renewed with some caveats, and yes, they're also eligible for new projects. And then last, the transitional rapid rehousing joint projects, THRRH, those will also not be eligible for renewal or new projects. And this is crucial as well. Again, you all doing great work. We've seen a tremendous success with these programs, and this was a really difficult decision to make. But we believe that we can transition these projects and create something that is still serving clients the best it can. All righty.
Megan,
This,
real quick, we had one
yeah.
question here, and this is kind of relevant to that renewal versus transition discussion. Depending on where applicants fall in the rankings and tiers, how would that affect budgets/awards? Should we expect to see budget reductions? And I think there are two key responses to this. One, it could potentially impact budget reductions, but the other thing is it could potentially impact a project not being funded for, not being selected for funding at all, both either at the internal competition level and ranked in priority list, or chosen by HUD, which is why Megan is bringing up all of these conversations about, can your project transition? Do you need to consider a transition? I just wanted to make sure to address that directly while we're still having these conversations.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jesse. And that's a great question. Thank you. I want to leave space here. Kristen, if you want to jump in as well, if you have any additional comments after I kind of give my spiel. So we have started having conversations with some agencies about this. Several of them have received additional funding through other sources, whether it's project-based vouchers or private funding, and they're saying, okay, I don't need all of this rental assistance anymore, but I still need to serve these same people. And so what we are looking at is doing a reallocation of those funds, and right sizing, I guess, is kind of the term that we've been using, the project itself, to keep as much of that tier one funding as we can. Um, it's really important that we're focusing on projects that are able to utilize their full funding. If not, then those projects can then reallocate, and um, that makes room for other project funding. Jesse, follow up on that?
Uh, not in addition to that, just another clarifying thing, just to make sure that people are on the same page. There's a few people who might be confused about your use of transition grant, and I know you will talk about this when you talk about the applications later, but just a 1,000-foot view, what is a transition grant and what does it mean and when is it relevant?
Yes. Okay. I have a real beef with HUD on this one. I wish they would have named it something different than transition grant because it sounds the same as transitional housing. They're not the same. A transition grant is when you transition your project from one type to another. That can be PSH to TH, it can be RRH to PSH, it can be TH to DVRRH or THRRH, like whatever the project type. It's transitioning your project type from one to another. It's very confusing because transition grants, in this case, especially this year, most of our transition grants are also going to be either PSH or RRH transitioning to transitional housing. Um, so when I say transition grant, that's any project type going to another project type. When I say transitional housing, that is in and of itself a project type. Yes, so I don't know if I should I continue on the first question or
No, I think that answered it. I think that's enough clarity, and we will talk a little bit more about those transition grants as you move to the applications
yeah,
specifically. Briefly, I mean, because they will have to use the new project application. The other note that I answered in writing on this is that transition grants, the transition projects like that, transition grants, are treated as new projects. That's the only other relevant note, I think.
yes. Yep,
And just one more question jumped in. To clarify, there are no possibilities to continue DVRRH funding, and they would need to transition to transitional housing to continue receiving funding. Is that correct, Megan?
it is. It is. Okay. This next section here, I will go through this just briefly, and then I want to show you guys the application and a couple of nuances with it. So again, please read through this. This is discussing how things will be ranked and scored and the explanation of what will be in tier one and tier two. What we anticipate this looking like is going to be what I showed on the slide a little bit ago, where tier one is most likely going to be those PSH, and then the regulatory requirement HMIS and CE, and then tier two is looking at primarily new transitional housing, new transitional or supportive services grants. And this literally goes in order how things will be ranked. This also highlights the domestic violence bonus. So there are several projects that will be having to require them to transition to transitional housing in the DV space. Um, we think that like if a new TH project that's DV does not score in the like top of tier two, we are anticipating that that DV bonus money will be able to cover those new DV um, TH projects as well. So this was one of those just really difficult decisions of balancing how do we keep these projects funded with the new HUD priorities in mind. A couple of notes. I know people have questions on the service participation requirements under TH. As especially as it relates to DV. Yes, VAWA prohibits you as a DV provider from requiring services. That said, we did talk extensively about this. The DV projects will not be required, obviously, to provide services. We do incentivize it with points. However, it is not a requirement. And there's areas where the DV projects can kind of make up those points. And again, read through this, it kind of explains things in more detail. The next section on this, scoring. So in the next couple of days, you will be sent a, oh gosh, Jesse, I already forgot the name of it, SPR?
Project Performance Report.
PPR, Project Performance Report. We've been talking a lot about the SPMs and the APRs. On the pretest, you were scored on your SPMs and APRs and on some like narrative questions. To make things a little bit less confusing, we're adding yet another acronym because more acronyms make things easier, allegedly. I think this one really does. So Jesse had the idea of calling this the Project Performance Report, PPR. You will be receiving your PPR in the next couple of days from our HMIS team, and you will actually have all of the information that you need to enter that into your project application. That specific report includes both your SPMs and your APRs. Because of that combination being confusing, we wanted to create something that encompassed both and made things a little bit more clear. Jesse, go ahead.
Yes, for clarity, that project performance report also includes the budget utilization piece. It is the only information you will need to fill out the project performance section of the renewal application. But the most important call out here is that that project performance report is only being sent to renewals, to projects currently funded. There are narrative questions on the new project application, which will answer the same information, which will provide us an indication of your project performance or your plans for project performance. But the actual project performance report will only be sent to currently funded projects who could potentially apply for a renewal. In this case, even some of the projects we know have already discussed transitioning, I believe are getting that project performance report as well. I think every currently funded CoC project will be receiving one. If your organization has multiple, you will receive that project performance report for each project that is CoC funded.
Yeah. So to reiterate, if you are a and if you're going to have to apply for a transition grant, even though that's a new project, but you're currently funded, you will still get a PPR. The rest of this, I think, just to highlight, we do have an appeals policy in here that is standard every year. And then the CoC board conflict of interest policy. This is something that all board members have to sign, especially those who are non-conflicted or not applying for funding themselves. And I believe that is it. But again, this is really going to walk you through the full process. Now on over to the application itself. So again, back on this internal competition page, you will see it renewal application guide. And I think we have, yeah, new application guide. And I love that we have including transition grants because transition grants are considered new projects, even though they're kind of not. These take you through all of the questions that you will see on the JOT form. It's important to note JOT form does allow you to save your work and go back in and edit. It also, we set it up this time to when you do submit it, if you like go back later and you're like, oh shoot, I think I need to change something about how I answered whatever question, or I forgot a detail. Um, you are able to go back in after submission and make edits as well. That said, Jotform does not allow you to progress to the next page until you've completed all of the questions on that one page. So this application guide is going to be your first step. I recommend clicking on this before you ever even open up the Jotform, because this shows you everything that's going to be on the Jotform. It also shows you how many points each question is worth. We've done our best to also highlight the point values on the Jotform, and you'll get a little uh, tally at the bottom, so you'll kind of know about what your score is on each page. But again, this is the easiest way for you to plan and to think through if you've got different team members who you know are going to be tackling different parts of the application. Use this to divvy up the workload. Use this to really go back and think through what your responses are. You can draft everything in some like Word or whatever is easiest for you to use, and then copy it over into Jotform itself. So this is really where I would be working if it were me. Using these guides, again, we have the new project and the renewal project. And it goes, again, word for word, question by question through everything you need to look through there. It also details the the PPRs and what we're looking for on those reports. And I realized, I don't know if we have this up here yet. So again, our HMIS team has been huge shout out to them if any of you are on the call. You're my heroes. They have been working fervently to get those PPRs out and completed. They will be run for the grant, the federal year. It's different from all of your grant years, I understand. I believe it's 10/1 through 9/30. 10/1/24 through 9/30/25 is the dates that they're using. Um, and you will be sent that directly, and you can use that to verify that, look through it, and you'll have to just enter it in to the Jotform.
For clarity, you don't enter any numbers on the product
Oh yeah,
performance piece. You certify that you have reviewed it. You indicate whether you've made any corrections. You describe any corrections in HMIS that you made, and then you provide anything that you deem necessary context. We do have two quick relevant questions here. One about the Jotform is there not a way to save and come back? So Megan explained this, and Jotform unfortunately doesn't allow us to do this. Because questions are required, you can't progress through each question on the Jotform, which is why we encourage you to use those new application guide and renewal application guides prior to entering Jotform. Additionally, there was a question, you may be getting ready to answer this, but is there a question about if your application does not score high enough, are you willing to transition? So I don't know if you want to address that one, Megan, or if you had that planned for later.
that was the perfect transition. Yes, thank you. I promise I didn't plant that question, but whoever said it, thank you. All right, so you will indeed have that option. Um, on the renewal application, if this is particularly important to our PSH friends, if you want to apply for both a renewal PSH and you're worried that maybe your PSH project doesn't score in tier 1 and you want to go ahead and submit a transition grant application to transition your PSH to TH, there will be an option to submit both. So I've got the application pulled up here, and it will essentially, I think this is the very next page. Oh, I guess
Unfortunately, it's on the
it's
next
not.
page after that. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, dang. Okay, no, that's okay. Um, again, this is a tricky thing about Jotform. It won't let you proceed to the next page until you've completed everything on that page. But the third page does indeed have that question of if you are if you think your project might score too low and be kicked out of tier 1 and you want to transition, we have it set up so that you can submit a transitional housing TH transition grant as well. And this is key as well. So if you, we have a certification in that form. Jesse, are these in the guide? I forget if we,
I was actually just writing down that we need to look to make sure that these got added in the guide. These were a
yeah.
very late addition to this process. I did put a screenshot in the chat so that everybody can see it, but there is a picture. It says, the first question is, please confirm, this is on the renewal application. Please confirm which option best describes how you are applying for this project in this competition. Only applying for this project as a renewal project with the same program components. And again, program components are those things Megan mentioned earlier, like PSH, rapid rehousing, transitional housing. Or you have the second option of I'm applying for this project as both a renewal project using this application with the same project components and as a transition grant using the new project application with different program components. If you select that second option, there is a certification that Megan was mentioning, and it states if my renewal project or my renewal application for this project is ranked in tier 1, I want to move forward with the renewal application and voluntarily rescind my application for this project as a transition grant. There's a similar question on the new project application for transition grants to certify that if their PSH in this case does not score in tier 1, they want to rescind the renewal and move forward with the transition. It will be hopefully as clear as possible when you are filling this out.
And again, we'll get this updated on the form or on the project guide to kind of provide additional clarity. The bottom line is, yes, you can submit a PSH renewal and a TH transition grant. If you're on, those of you who took the pretest and you're kind of on the bubble, you're like, I don't know if I'm going to score high enough, you can do both. We will not fund both. So if you'll have to either fall in either tier. So hopefully that is clear as mud. Again, feel free to reach out and ask questions and we can talk through it more if you have additional questions. All right, I want to transition. We've got 15 minutes left. I want to make sure we have some time for questions. I will leave this up. Where did my screen go? All right, I'll leave this up. But if anyone has anything they want to talk through, feel free to unmute, or if you want to put things in the Q&A, we can go through those now.
We do have a few questions lingering here. One is a quick one that I answered in the Q&A box, but it's just please clarify when the project performance report will be sent out. That project performance report will be sent out at the latest tomorrow. The HMIS team is doing a final review of the report this morning, and we've got the email like ready and drafted. We're just waiting on that final review to be approved. The second one, and this one's more for Megan, will there be any guidance on best practices for applications for transitional housing and SSO grants, particularly how to budget social services, supportive services appropriately?
Yeah, we actually have a working group that's been meeting since May, April, sometime this spring. And they've been working on some TH specific policies and procedures. Um, well, even if those aren't published before the application is due, I do think it's relevant to, you know, we can have, I think it's a good idea to have some additional TA around TH. For those of you who weren't able to make it to Suzanne of Housing Innovations presentation at Development Day, we do have that recorded. We have the slides posted as well on the development day page. I do think we will try to get that out to you. Great question.
All right, there's one other question still lingering right now, and it's just a confirmation and for clarity. If somebody is doing a transition grant, transitioning from rapid rehousing to transitional housing, which application do they use?
The new project application.
The new project application. And on the internal competition website, the project application links, the renewal one is listed as FY26 renewal application guide. The other one is listed as FY26 new project application guide, parentheses, including transition grants, because we know that that is a confusing topic. There's one more question. Even if the transitional housing policies aren't fully ready to publish, could we consider posting some of the highlights?
Yeah, that's a great idea. The other thing I forgot to mention in regards to Forrest's question, HUD is incentivizing us to use at least 30% of our ARD towards supportive services. So in particular for those TH projects and those new SSO projects, we want to go heavier on the supportive services. I know this is completely different from what we've been preaching and what HUD has been instructing us the last many, many years. Heavier on the supportive services. They're recommending we shoot for 30%. But again, you all are very much the practitioners and the experts in this. But yeah, that's a great idea, Lonnie.
We've got a few questions here. Acknowledgement real quick. Lori Wood put the link to the slides from Suzanne's presentation in the chat. So if you
Thanks,
are
Lori.
interested in those transitional housing slides, select those. Forrest asked, do we have more information on the availability of rental assistance to nonprofits in transitional housing? If you want to touch base on that topic.
We don't. So we are talking about this internally to see if there's like specific guidance that we can put out. Um, we're working fervently to try and this is a huge conundrum. A lot of COCs are facing it. Um, Forrest, I'm volunteering you as well because I know that you have also experienced the using leasing dollars instead of rental assistance. We've heard from several partners and several just folks nationally as well. Leasing is a little bit trickier for a couple of different reasons. Primarily, you have to be the leaseholder, you as the project sponsor rather than the tenant. And then there would be an occupancy agreement between you and the tenant, but you're holding that legal lease. And I know that is in some ways it solves a lot of issues. It can be more enticing for a landlord to have a lease with you rather than a lease with someone who's coming out of several years of experiencing homelessness. But at the same time, you're also financially on the hook. And there are some best practices out there. I think we're just going to work as hard as we can to get you as much TA as possible over the next couple of weeks and pursuing options of are there ways to administer that rental assistance through a government agency? Um, we're working on it.
Just to add to this specific question, Forrest added the context that the biggest challenge with leasing is the FMR restriction. And then the second piece he added was they've used a tri-party lease to solve the leasing issue. And that may be something that, Forrest, would you be willing to send a copy of that tri-party lease to Megan if you have not already? Because I'm sure Megan would love that.
Yeah, I know you worked on it with Rachel Samples, so I'm sure it's in our files somewhere, but if you can email it to me, I can find it faster and get it out to folks. Um, we'll probably also, this is me just pulling something out and brainstorming on the fly. This is ultimately going to be Jesse's team that decides this, but it might be great, Jesse, to have like a section either on the internal competition page, probably with these resources that we're kind of talking through. We can figure out how best to release those.
Yeah, we'll make a list and we'll try to get everything added. If you see something that you think would be beneficial here, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like Megan said, you can reach out to that CoC network at ihcta.in.gov at any time, and we are happy to meet one-on-one, happy to have a call, happy to help however we can, because we know this is confusing and difficult and complicated. There's two small questions left, three small questions left. How do we increase supportive services in a transition grant? Are they bound to the budget? Are they making it because it's a new project? Do they create a new budget? How do you recommend they complete that?
Yeah, great question. Um, I think we'll try to get something scheduled with Howard maybe to specifically talk through this. I think we actually might already have a webinar scheduled um, to go into more specifics about transition grants. If not, we will work on getting that scheduled. This is a really critical TA point that we know we need to get out. We're also working on an FAQ. We've been trying to get all as much stuff out to you guys as possible. It's been quite the turnaround time just to get these policies and presentations out. So we'll continue to provide stuff.
Okay, another question, and Megan, we anticipated this one, but do you have any indication that the new lawsuit with from National Alliance to End Homelessness will impact any of this?
Great question. We are forging ahead. We do not anticipate changing any of our timeline at this point. Because it is such a tight timeline, we don't want to risk, not putting something together and sending it in. But we've seen this before. We'll see what happens. But yeah, forge ahead.
Yes. Another question. If someone is applying for transitional housing scattered site, if they plan to use it as a scattered site, would the organization have to be the leaseholder for each of these properties?
Yeah.
And the condition there, as Megan has mentioned prior, is that nonprofits can't do rental assistance, so you have to do leasing dollars for that through transitional housing, which is the complicating factor.
I recommend doing a lot of Googling and research on master leasing. The city of Wisconsin has, or city of Wisconsin, city of Milwaukee, I think it is, has done a lot of on master leasing. There's some other best practices on master leasing. Just Googling best practices in master leasing, that's where I've been starting. Encourage you to do the same as well.
In the chat, I put the screenshot from the website showing all of the anticipated webinars, all the ones currently scheduled. This is not a comprehensive list. There may be other webinars that get added. We do recommend you follow up on that website relatively frequently because we will add recordings, we will add materials, we will add any new documents we can think of that are beneficial to you all during this, any new webinars that we need to hold. But to specifically highlight, the one that we are at today is the CoC NOFO internal competition webinar. We have that first time applicant webinar on Tuesday. The registration link is on the internal competition page. We also have CoC NOFO application office hours. Whereas this was a presentation by Megan with a little bit of time for Q&A, that office hours on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time will be for you to bring your questions from the application. If you have specific questions, if you've gotten to a point where something's stuck, if math isn't mathing, if you don't know how to answer something, if you're unsure how to verify or support a certain statement, that is where you can bring those questions. We also have two separate webinar office hours set up for the HMIS system performance piece. That will be where you can talk about the project performance report, where you can talk about how to prove your data quality, how to support those plans for data quality and data collection. We also have a second CoC NOFO application office hours 3 days prior to the application's due date. No one is expected to be fully done with this process tomorrow. Just because you get that project performance report, we're not expecting you to rush your way through it and complete it immediately. Please attend these webinars. Please bring questions to us. We cannot know what we need to help with if you guys don't ask us questions, because they're fantastic questions. Everything we have gotten has been fantastic questions. Megan, that is all of the questions in the Q&A and in the chat at present.
Can I add a side note? Um,
No,
just
of
no,
course.
okay, I will leave. Side note, for renewal projects, you received an email yesterday about the GIW. It is really important that you fill that out, even with your current project's information. So even if you've already decided that you're going to transition, please answer that GIW, and make sure that everything is correct, because that is what determines our annual renewal demand, which then also determines what our tier one is supposed to be. Normally, the GIW would have happened in about March timeframe, and unfortunately, it came out this week, and we have to turn everything in on Monday. If you haven't seen that, it should have gone to somebody in your agency, and it's really important that you fill that out.
It went out this morning at like 6:30 a.m.
And we've already had 10 submissions from 5 different organizations. So kudos
Great.
to those that have filled it out already. But that
A
deadline is specifically tomorrow. So it's a very tight turnaround and we apologize, but we really do need it.
Yes, and it's a GIW, or grants inventory worksheet. So that's just telling HUD or confirming with HUD that the amount of money that we, or resources that we are receiving for the balance of state. And we can check, Jonna, who it went to.
Jonna, you are a subrecipient. So, oh yeah, anyone who is a subrecipient has not received anything specific yet. Because that's
Okay.
we'll work on those.
By that case, do you mean anybody that's part of a consolidation or a multi-organization one, or
Yes,
just
sorry.
okay,
Yes, yep,
just making sure.
correct. Yeah, if you're in a consolidated project under IHCDA, you won't be receiving it. We'll be doing those in-house. If you're a recipient and you're the only one on the award, you would have received one. Brian, I sent it from CoC Network. I didn't get a bounce back from you, but I can resend it.
Yeah, and Brian, you are listed as a recipient, so please do check. It may have been, we've been having a little bit of a difficulty at the state with some of our emails from some of our shared inboxes going to spam. So do check a spam filter. Anybody who thinks they should have received it and did not, just shoot us an email. It'll be great.
Yeah,
A
Angelina, you're a subrecipient in a consolidated award, so we'll be taking care of it for you. Jennifer, it went to Lisa. Glad you found it, Brian. Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you all. Continue sending us your questions. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. We really, really want to get as much TA out to you as possible. It's coming fast. We wish it would come faster.
One last question, actually, that's really relevant here. Will transition grants be prioritized over actual new applications?
Ooh, great question. Um, yes. So read through the policy. Yes, it depends, kind of. The internal ranking and scoring policies, that document that we went through, literally spells out exactly how those things will be ranked. So depending on the project type and depending on the organization, yes, probably.
All right. Thank you guys. Thanks
Thanks,
everybody for
everyone.
attending. Send us questions and attend our future webinars.